Have you ever swung open your refrigerator door or poked around in your pantry, only to find yourself asking whether an old culinary favorite might now be risky simply because you've crossed into your 70s? The reality is that, as we grow older, our bodies become less tolerant of certain hidden perils in everyday foods. Dangers that a younger digestive system might have brushed aside without incident. Physicians increasingly see seniors who run into foodborne infections, digestive woes, or spikes in blood pressure triggered by long-time dietary staples that no longer play so nicely with an aging body. In the paragraphs ahead, we'll shine a light on 5 foods that specialists typically warn folks over 70 to drastically limit or avoid outright. If you persist in clinging to old dietary habits, you might be setting the stage for preventable problems, from minor gut distress to full-blown medical emergencies that escalate with shocking speed. By the end, you'll grasp why these items land on the no-go list and which healthier alternatives can help keep you thriving throughout your later years. Take Helen as an example. At 72, she bragged that her diet had scarcely changed since her 20s. Her logic? If something hadn't harmed her by now, it never would. However, she was blindsided at a routine checkup when her blood pressure read alarmingly high, and she'd been battling inexplicable fatigue. A consultation with a dietitian uncovered that Helen's cherished meal staples were brimming with additives, sodium, or bacteria that a senior's body is less able to combat. After just a few targeted modifications, her stamina surged, her blood pressure steadied, and her digestion improved in remarkable ways. It's proof positive that certain foods can slowly morph into adversaries as we age. Items that might have been harmless at 40, but can sabotage your health by 70. Topping the list is processed deli meat. Those oh-so-convenient slices of bologna, salami, or similar lunchtime fixes. Indeed, they make quick sandwich building a breeze, but they're typically packed to the brim with sodium, preservatives, and sometimes nitrates or nitrites that can put undue strain on the cardiovascular systems of older adults. Past 70, blood pressure spikes become easier and renal function isn't always what it used to be. Overloading yourself with high-sodium deli slices can cause fluid retention, tax the heart, and trigger hypertension episodes that can tip into critical territory. Think heart problems or stroke risk. Worse yet, certain deli meats present a higher threat of contamination, listeria for example, that might only inconvenience a robust 20-something but can wreak havoc on a senior's less resilient immune defenses. You may argue, but I've eaten ham sandwiches forever. Still, your body's thresholds shift over time. If you can't imagine life without these sliced meats, opt for low-sodium, additive-free varieties and eat them quickly rather than letting them languish in the fridge. That extra vigilance can curb the prospect of abrupt sickness or long-term buildup leading to serious heart complications. A second troublemaker emerges in unpasteurized milk or cheese, often lurking in artisanal or raw dairy products. Raw milk may carry a sweet, nostalgic ring, perhaps it reminds you of those farm-fresh days, but it also carries the risk of bacterial foes like E. coli, salmonella, and listeria, all more menacing to older folks with compromised immunity. Younger people can often shake off a mild infection. Seniors, however, may endure more severe outcomes, potentially landing in the hospital. Many health regulations strongly advise older adults to pick pasteurized products for safety. You can still savor diverse flavors of cheese and milk, just confirm the label says pasteurized. Past a certain age, even a routine infection can spiral into a crisis, so it's better not to gamble. Helen, for instance, discovered she could still satisfy her cheese cravings by switching to premium pasteurized varieties, nipping the bacterial risk in the bud. The third problematic food might surprise those who have long enjoyed a crunchy garnish. Raw or undercooked sprouts. Think alfalfa or mung bean varieties. While they lend a refreshing bite to salads or sandwiches, sprouts are infamously susceptible to bacterial infestation, since the warm, moist conditions that help them sprout also provide a perfect breeding ground for pathogens. A more youthful system might fend off a small bacterial load, but for seniors, a fleeting infection could spiral into severe dehydration or gastrointestinal upheaval. Cooking sprouts lowers the danger, but many folks prefer them raw, which substantially amplifies risk. If you can't part with that crisp texture, try lightly sautéing them or substituting with greens like arugula or microgreens that pose fewer bacterial hazards. Once Helen realized that raw sprouts could land her in a hospital bed, she started incorporating microgreens into her sandwiches instead, and never looked back. Number 4 is another item woven into many diets, though some might not even register the hazard: raw or undercooked eggs. Whether it's that velvety homemade mayonnaise, a Caesar dressing with raw yolks, or a gently runny soft-boiled egg, salmonella looms as a threat. Plenty of people recall a time when raw eggs were commonly consumed in shakes or cultural dishes without issue. But shifting food safety standards and older immune systems complicate the picture. Seniors may suffer dangerous consequences if salmonella strikes, including severe gastrointestinal distress or bloodstream infections. If you insist on that barely set yolk, at least use pasteurized eggs. Many supermarkets sell them in shells, or cook them thoroughly to eliminate salmonella concerns altogether. Helen used to love dipping toast into a sunny-side-up yolk, but began cooking her eggs fully once her doctor explained how quickly salmonella could escalate in an older system. She now opts for pasteurized eggs if she craves a slightly runny center. Rounding out the quintet of cautionary foods is the overly processed, sodium-loaded instant soup or noodle. Those convenient packets or cups lurking in so many kitchen cabinets. Indeed, they're quick to prepare but often contain alarming quantities of salt, sometimes nearing an entire day's recommended intake in one serving, not to mention questionable flavor enhancers that may irritate an older gut or drive blood pressure upward. Having them occasionally isn't the end of the world, but for seniors who rely on them frequently due to low energy for cooking, the cumulative high sodium can strain aging kidneys and hearts. Hydrogenated oils and other synthetic preservatives in these instant meals can pile further stress on a body that doesn't bounce back as quickly as it once did. If a quick meal is unavoidable, look for low-sodium, more natural choices, or devote a little time to batch cooking homemade soups you can freeze in smaller containers. After Helen found herself constantly bloated and experienced mild chest pressure following instant noodle dinners, she switched to homemade vegetable broth garnished with herbs. The difference in her comfort level and blood pressure readings was striking. Why does all of this become more critical after 70? In part because the body's compensatory powers decline, turning issues such as food poisoning, spikes in blood pressure, or even subtle digestive irritations into bigger threats. Additionally, older adults often juggle multiple prescriptions for conditions like hypertension, diabetes, or arthritis that compound vulnerability. Recovery periods stretch out, and hospital stays can introduce risks of their own. Steering clear of these 5 offenders: processed deli meats, raw or unpasteurized dairy, raw sprouts, undercooked eggs, and hyper-salty convenience meals, can ward off a host of sneaky dangers that disproportionately affect older individuals. Avoiding them isn't just about dodging an upset stomach for a day. It can spare you hospital admissions, prevent major infections, and keep blood pressure or kidney function from spiraling. Another angle to consider: many seniors gravitate towards simpler routines or shortcuts in the kitchen, possibly landing on convenience foods loaded with salt or preservatives, or bulk buying items and storing them longer than recommended, raising spoilage risks. Recognizing which products carry a higher threat allows you to plan alternatives. For instance, replace salty deli slices with fresh chicken or turkey you cook at home, or switch from raw milk cheese to a pasteurized brand that still tastes divine. You don't have to forgo flavor entirely. You're simply dodging extra risk. What about the occasional indulgence, like a special holiday meal or a family gathering? A single slip might not guarantee disaster, but bear in mind that one round of severe food poisoning or a burst of high blood pressure can have more dire consequences for a 75-year-old than it would for someone half that age. If you're dining out or at a social event, it's worth politely inquiring about how dishes were prepared. Yes, it can feel awkward to turn down certain foods, but your well-being has to come first. Loved ones generally understand if you explain the health implications. It's about awareness rather than constant fear. A candid recognition that your immune responses and organs can't handle as many shocks as they once did. By adopting these few cautions, you reduce your odds of unnecessary crises. For those who feel these restrictions seem heavy-handed, it's all about proportion and balance. You don't need to flip your entire diet overnight, but veering towards safer and less heavily salted or germ-prone options can improve well-being in big ways. Plenty of older adults note how much more vibrant they feel, whether it's measured by energy levels, steadier blood pressure, or a calmer stomach, once they break free from hidden dietary pitfalls. They also sidestep medical costs, along with the anxiety that comes from last-minute doctor visits. Instead of thinking of these recommendations as prohibitions, think of them as guardrails that help you enjoy life's moments, like playing with grandkids or traveling, without looming digestive or cardiovascular hazards. Moreover, it can be cost to it. Hospital stays hit hard financially and the stress is draining. By circumventing these common dietary traps, you might save money otherwise spent on medications or interventions down the line. Often the substitutions aren't complicated. Slicing cooked chicken yourself instead of relying on processed lunch meat, or making a simple broth in bulk so you aren't tempted by that sodium-laden instant ramen. A bit of planning goes a long way in protecting your independence and your health. And crucially, this doesn't mean losing the pleasure of good food as you age. You can still relish savory dishes, explore new recipes with fresh herbs, and indulge periodically, so long as you stay mindful of red flag items. If you have an irrepressible craving for a certain soft cheese, check whether there's a pasteurized or thoroughly cooked option that scratches the itch. Over time, many people rediscover subtle flavors once numbed by excessive salt and preservatives. Seniors who pivot to fresher eating often claim they taste foods in a whole new way, liberated from the chemical tang of ultra-processed fare. If you're already in your mid-70s and have been consistently consuming these risky foods, don't panic. It's never too late to change course. The simplest step is to be more vigilant. Glance at labels, inquire about preparation methods when dining out, ensure your fridge is set to a safe temperature, and discard questionable items rather than pushing the storage envelope. Keep track of recall advisories, especially for raw dairy or sprouts. This level of attentiveness dovetails nicely with other senior safety habits, like ensuring your home is well lit or doing gentle exercises to preserve mobility. The goal is minimizing avoidable pitfalls, letting you live with greater ease and less worry. So remember, deli meats brimming with sodium and preservatives, raw dairy that may harbor bacteria, sprouts grown in bacteria-friendly conditions, undercooked eggs at risk for salmonella, and those all-too-tempting instant meals loaded with salt. These 5 categories don't appear on the blacklist randomly. Medical professionals see them fueling sudden ailments, lengthy recoveries, and higher hospital admissions more often than you'd suspect. Skipping or limiting these culprits helps you preserve the energy and well-being you need to appreciate your retirement years, to visit grandchildren, tend to your garden, or simply relax without fretting over an unsettled stomach or that next blood pressure check. Tiny, deliberate steps can dramatically safeguard your daily life. Hence, next time you step up to the grocery shelf or rifle through your fridge, take a moment before grabbing that pre-sliced salami or raw sprout container. Read labels to confirm your cheese is pasteurized. If you're partial to eggs with a runny center, choose pasteurized eggs or cook them thoroughly. Try to resist the siren call of neon-colored instant noodles by preparing a small batch of soup instead. Though these decisions might appear trivial in isolation, collectively they strengthen the scaffolding that keeps you healthy and free from avoidable pitfalls. By acting on these tips, you're not cowering in fear. You're taking charge, ensuring that your golden years are defined by comfort, self-reliance, and the freedom to do what you love. Should you need further support, a healthcare provider or dietitian can offer meal planning insights that cater to your taste buds, yet steer you away from dangerous choices. Aging with grace doesn't equate to surrendering the joy of mealtime. It simply demands sharper discernment about which foods no longer serve you well. By consciously steering clear of these high-risk options, you may dodge the cascade of medical emergencies that steal your energy and autonomy. Instead, keep your diet fresh, balanced, and inherently safer, and you might find that your appetite and verve endure far longer than you expected. In essence, these small but methodical adjustments to your plate protect the resilience you've nurtured over a lifetime, enabling you to live every day with the confidence and health you deserve.